What? Oh.
Hey, is that too loud? I mean, I could take a break.
I guess we'll just go ahead and start. Dave's trying to get his mustache on. Andy's working out. Stay hard. We were just saying before it'll be cut out probably, but this is why Joe Rogan records the entire podcast, because all the great stuff happens like before you're actually supposed to start.
Well, I'm kind of sweating a lot here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hey, sun's out, guns out, brother.
Yeah.
Been on the treadmill since 5:30, and I didn't really want to stop yet.
The work's never done, is it, Andy?
It's never done. Somebody's got to carry the boats and the loads.
Well, I want to take this off really quick. So I just, Wire needed to make an appearance real quick because there's been rumors that the current team known as long off season might be firing their offensive coordinator, their head coach, and their general manager.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this is just not going to work.
You got news on that?
It's in development. You know how things, a lot of times things like that only get out if teams want it to get out. So we'll see what happens, though. A lot of firings in the NFL, so I thought maybe it'd bleed over into Hillbilly Harrison.
Yeah. If somebody was going to lose their managerial job this season, Dave, who do you think it would be?
In the Hillbilly Harrison League?
Yeah, Hillbilly Harrison League. If one of the owners was just like, man, this team, we gotta start over.
Well, you can't. I mean, you really have to start with the 4 that didn't make the playoffs, so that puts me in the mix. And we'll get to this in a little bit, but I'd say if you're one of the 2 teams that owe more than the entry fee,
yeah,
then you might be on the chopping block. So, yeah, you'll find out who you are if you don't already know.
It's interesting that the NFL's definitely gone down that rabbit hole where it's like, man, they're not afraid to pull the plug on somebody after 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like all the stats about how it's so much better for like a young quarterback to know that the head coach is going to be there for the next couple years.
Yeah,
but then other teams just throw that out the window.
Well, I think it's so hard to move off of players and moving off of coaches because it doesn't affect their salary cap. That's like, it's a thing they have control over, and it gives the presumption of change. Like it seems like you're trying to do something, but man, it just like that just is a recipe for disaster for some of these losing programs. I think where it's like you just keep recycling coaches.
It's the easiest move, right? Like you can change 20 people to try to change a culture, or you can change 1.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the funny thing is, like, because culture happens in a bunch of different ways, but if your ownership has created a culture where it's, if you don't win in the very first season, that's a culture as well, and so like that lives as a bedrock underneath of anything that a coach might do. And so there's a pressure that says, man, we got a new guy coming in, and if we don't win for him, he's out the door too. So I'd love to see somebody just give a guy a chance, but we just live in a world where you don't have that time.
The other piece of that is if you're a good team that wins a lot of times you lose your offensive coordinator and maybe even your defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
To go to one of these teams that just lost a coach.
Yeah. It's been a long time ago, but you guys remember when, I don't know if Andy, if you remember this, but was it Schottenheimer got fired from the Chargers for a 14-win season? It was like back-to-back years they got the bye. That was when 2 teams got a bye. Back-to-back years the Chargers got byes, and they lost in their first round, which was the second round of the playoffs, 2 years in a row, fired. So win your division, get a bye 2 years in a row, don't win a playoff game though, and you're gone. And so that's like, it's not even about failure. It's, it's about like Super Bowls. That's what teams want. So, and only one can win it. So it's a tough 31 unhappy teams every season.
No.
So
Thanks for joining us, Andy. I guess you know why you're on.
yeah.
I
Well,
did.
if not, maybe we can get to it real quick, Dave. Do you have an award to give out?
Oh, well, yeah, sure. Hey, Andy.
Hey, thanks. I
Only
didn't
one
get.
game mattered, and then there was only one winner. So there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, what'd you think? At what point in the season did you go from I'm just trying to make the playoffs to maybe I have a chance to win this whole thing?
Well, I don't know. That's. I think I always thought you just had to make the playoffs because then anything could happen, and
Yeah.
I think this was a good illustration of that. But it was weird. I mean, my season was like the Bengals at the beginning. I think was I 1-4, 1-5? I think it was something like that.
Let's take a look here. If I can get to it. See what your
I should know this.
yeah, you should. Season I thought
I
it would
was
show me every
I won the first. I had high points in the very first week, and then I had rattled off 4 losses in a row.
yeah.
So I was 1-4, and I think Adam was 1-4 as well.
Yeah,
And then
after winning week one against Lee and scoring high points, you lost 4 weeks in a row. Two of those losses, though, came in matches where you scored over 100 points, and then you scored 132 again against Heim Time, and really only scored under 100 1 week the rest of it. So, like, I mean, if we want to talk about consistency, Travis obviously had the high scoring points, but if I'm looking down here after that losing streak, only to have, from what is that? From week 6 on, only had one match where you scored less than 100, and that was 97. It's a pretty good run.
yeah, I remember we had we had food here, right?
Yeah.
And I remember there was 3 weeks left, and it was like there's so many close teams, and I was like, I had the high points of like obviously Travis had the high points, but then it was Brian and Ratty and myself, I think, that were the next three, right?
Yeah.
But our records really didn't reflect it. And I was like, even though I think I might have been at that point just barely the highest, and Brian eventually got higher than me, I think. But I was like, I could really lose the last 3 games of the season. And
Yeah.
somehow I squeaked the one out against Lee, but then I did lose the last two. And
Yeah.
if I lose all 3 of those, I'm not sure if I make it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's interesting because, you lost the last 2 weeks against Ed and then against Travis. Travis put up 150, but you scored over 100 both times. And we had, your team scored a lot of points, didn't have a bunch of wins. Same thing with Brian. And then you had teams like Junior and Adam who made the playoffs, and their teams got a lot of wins, but didn't score, as many points. Adam caught on mid-season and started scoring more consistently in the hundreds, but you know, Junior never did. Dave, you struggled sometimes to get, and so it's just interesting where a team that can have that many, usually 100's a nice benchmark. It's like, you can
Yeah.
still lose matches when you score 100, obviously, but it's a good benchmark for where you want to aim for. And yeah, like to score over 100 the last 2 weeks of the season and get 2 losses, but then
Yeah.
still, have to face
Yeah,
Travis again, and then get the win. That was big.
yeah.
But then when you get to the playoffs, then you want to keep that going, and you definitely did with what 130, 120, and then 105. So that's what you want to do those last 3 weeks is put yourself
Well,
in a position like that.
I want to talk about that, but before that, Kevin, you made a note, 100 a week, right? So that would have been 1,400 points. There were only 3 people that had over that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that, I think historically that was true, but I think it was even a little bit less than that. Like the average this year, I don't know what it is, but like Travis blew it out of the water. He was like at 1,700, and I think Brian was second. What was he 1461? And I was at 1447. I think that we were the only three that averaged over 100. So I thought that was interesting.
Do those totals just do the first 14 weeks though?
Yeah. They stop keeping track of like
Okay.
wins and
The total.
losses and
Yeah.
like they have you ranked now in how you finished in the playoff bracket,
Which
but
makes
the
it
point,
Yeah. So I see what
yeah,
you're saying. The 1400 being
yeah,
The benchmark,
benchmark.
only three beat it, but that was always my mindset because I heard you guys say
Yeah.
it all the time, right? But then
yeah,
go look at the first round of the playoff bracket. And I find this very interesting because, well, Travis Flex did what he does, right? So he's 137, and Ratty was like in the spot that nobody wanted. And Dave, to your question earlier, when did I think it was weird? Because there were a couple times, and one, Kevin, I was looking. There were two different times where I thought I had the win, and CeeDee Lamb had the big day, right?
yep,
And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you could have added up this 3 weeks prior, and it wouldn't have beat his score that day. And
yep,
I'm like, I was ready to go to bed. I'm like, there's no way. And I was trying to think I might leapfrog Ed for the second spot, and it would really help me with the playoffs, right? And then the other time was the side bet, and I'm playing Ed, and he has who was his receiver that went off, and I was like, he's gonna win the side bet and beat me, and he did.
yeah,
And I'm
that was he got the twofer there where it was like the
yeah,
points ended up being enough for the win, and his wide receiver scored so many that he stole the side bet. It was crazy.
yeah. And I guess where I'm going with all this is like it doesn't matter in the end. You got to make the playoffs, but then look at the first week. So you knew Flex was going to be the number one spot. So Brian and I ended up with the 4 and 5 seed, but yet we had the second and third highest points prior to the playoffs. And Brian's team, for whatever reason, just didn't show up. I had a good score, but if I'd played any of the other winners, I'd have been knocked out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that, yeah. I mean,
'Cause I was 128, and Junior had 130, and Adam had 131. I was like, oh, that worked out pretty good.
yeah, yeah, and it's just about like when you know, you could have played Junior, you could have played Adam 13 other times, and they probably wouldn't have scored that many just because of historically like how their team scored. But
Right?
on that week, you know what I mean? Week 15 of the season, that everything lined up for them, and they had great weeks. Good for
Yep.
them. But yeah, it is crazy to see like the swings sometimes, and like you can think that just like I had a feeling that it was going to be tough for Travis to win the championship only because, and how many times can you just like score 130? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like it because of the nature of fantasy football, it's like, man, one of these weeks somebody's going to have an off week, or Lamar's going to go off, but Henry's not, or something was going to, but man, there were for Travis, they were few and far between.
They were. And I caught him on that 1 week, right?
Yep.
And that's the roll on the dice. So I guess when you go back, Dave, it's like I still go into it. You just have to make the playoffs. You probably don't want the 8 spot, but other than that,
I'll,
it's
yeah. I mean, this year you definitely didn't want it, but there's been other years where maybe not as many, where the first place team sort of finds their way in there and ends up there at the end or something and isn't the hottest team going, you know.
Yeah, sometimes the 8 spot team's a team that had to win 3 weeks in a row or something to get there, and
Yeah.
they've kind of like figured some things out, and so they might be hot, but you just never know. Like I wouldn't have expected Junior's team to score 130 in the first round of playoffs, but there they were doing it. You get if you think you're going to depend on something being true in fantasy, it's not always that way. Even going, we end a week before the regular season ends, but even in that week, there were, we had matchup problems. We had bye weeks in week 14 that everybody was dealing with. So, it's a different kind of formula. But, so we congratulate Andy on winning team of the week, really, for the championship. But, going back to that matchup with Adam, just for the sake of the podcast, we'll give out a hillbilly, and there was only one loser, but I would love to have a conversation with Adam. We had him on last year when we did this, but I got to think that he was kicking himself for sitting his two favorite, Kansas City defense and Mahomes, and that's not the end all be all, because I'm sure that Andy would like to go back and play Thielen that week, instead of playing Keenan Allen. But those are two decisions that Adam had to wrestle with going into it, and they didn't work out for him. And I just wonder how much, if any, regret. Adam's pretty secure in his decision, so I'm sure he can just be like, man, I rolled the dice. This is what I did. This is why I did it, and I'm fine with it. I'll live with it. He's that kind of guy. But watching it happen, especially with Mahomes going early and watching that transpire and being like, oh, I left all those points,
Yeah.
would have loved to have that.
Because you would think like, oh, he got beat by 25, but
yeah,
there's 25 points right there.
Yeah. Did you see that happening, Andy? And were you thankful that Mahomes was on his bench?
Yeah. I don't think I realized he had that much until afterwards, and I was like, oh wow. And I wasn't paying attention to Indianapolis. I was like, oh, I didn't see that, but yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, the Mahomes is, that one really is, like a 10-point swing, the Mahomes versus Flacco, but the Kansas City defense versus the Indy defense, that's the one that would have really made a huge difference in the matchup had he played them. I don't think that one of them on their own would have been enough. Maybe I'm wrong, but both of them together obviously would have. But if he would have just played the Kansas City defense, and not played Indy, it would have made things a whole lot closer. And then he really would have been kicking himself for not playing Patrick. So
yeah, and it's one of those things where you're looking at some numbers and you're looking at the other team, like who Indy's playing, because you're not doing it because Indy had a stellar defense all year,
right?
But you're reading stuff and you're like, oh man, they're placing the Giants, and Giants had nothing to play for and played out of their minds.
Yeah.
It's something not to play for, right? The first
yeah. Yeah. They didn't want any part of Shedeur Sanders. They were like, get us out of this number one spot.
Don't make it awkward. We weren't going to pick him anyway.
Yep. So, but yeah. So Andy, you've been in the league for 2 years. You've kind of been connected to us for quite a while. You hosted a draft a long time ago.
The kid was in the league for what, a year, right?
Yeah, Noah was in there for a year. So you've been connected to this, for a little bit. Knew we were doing it. What's it been like your first 2 seasons? What have you learned about, kind of playing fantasy football? Being in the chat, watching the podcast from time to time. Like, did you think that you'd be this into this whole world, or what's it been like for you?
I don't know. Roller coaster, maybe. It's a love-hate relationship. Like, I wasn't overly excited to do it. I'm like, I just enjoy the chat, right?
Yeah.
And don't watch a ton of football. I don't know. You know what? It's weird though, because I've watched more football this last year than I probably have the last 5 combined.
Yeah.
Okay.
And part of it's because I have interest, and then part of it's, well, both boys are gone, so Sean and I will just watch.
Yeah.
We'll turn football, and she's like, "You got anybody playing?" I'm like, "Yep." Kittle's playing. She's like, "Oh, I like him."
Yeah. There you go.
So that's interesting. But when you start out 1 and 4, you're kind of like, why am I doing this? Why do I care? And feel like a Bengals fan, right? And so I don't know. That's the other part. But I do think it's something. I like the dialogue and just the it's a group thing, and it gives you something common to talk about. So I enjoy that. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the incentives of the money and we say this all the time, like, this gives me an excuse to talk to a lot of my friends, guys that I don't get to see very often. It gives, Dave and I did a lot of work together at church for a long time, and so we would do stuff together. But this, a few, other than just dropping in the chat every once in a while, like, I just wouldn't see Dave. And so this gave us an excuse to jump on here and talk and BS and, about nothing in particular, but, so it's therapeutic in a way just to be connected to a bunch of guys and have fun and talk crap. And so, the competition and the prizes or it's like, that I really could care less. So
I kind of like it, like going to a horse race, and like I'm not Adam. I don't have a spreadsheet to figure out which one to bet on. Just bet on a horse, and I'm like, I got somebody to root for, and he might get hurt, he might not finish. But I look at like my draft picks, and I don't remember, but like I picked my 2 running backs. I played them the beginning, and then suddenly I'm playing Hubbard and Dobbins. What's his name? Dobbins, J.K. Dobbins. I thought White and ETN would be my starters, right? And they weren't. And it took me a little bit to like, yep, I'm giving up on them. And then Diggs was out. So it's like who you draft is not always who gets you there. And you just have to luck into like the right one. And I remember, I think even when I picked ETN, like Barkley might have been available. I might have picked right before Brian. And I was looking at Barkley, and I'm like, no, I might end up drafting Jalen Hurts. I don't want to have both of them. Well, maybe that would have been a good thing, like what Flex had.
I think it would have been all right.
You probably you would have squeaked by.
Yeah. But I think that was my rationale, and I'm like, oh, I probably should just went with my gut. He would have been the better pick. But what do you do?
Yeah.
Well, it all worked out for you. Like you said, I mean, nobody was catching Travis for just the league championship, but you get to, after only 2 years in the league, get to hoist that trophy and say you won it at the very end. And
we don't have a trophy.
Yeah, we don't. We can debate which is tougher to win, the regular season or the championship. And I think they're both difficult to win. Like you said, all you have to do is make it to the playoffs, Andy, and anybody has a chance to win. Travis would tell you winning that championship's pretty dang hard, just because he put in all that work. Has obviously on paper the best team this season, doesn't get it done. And so we have very few. Only a couple times. Rennie's one. I think Adam maybe is another where you've got a team that wins the league and then wins the championship. That's a tough task.
Well, it's the difference between, being consistent enough to win, enough more than everybody else, but you can have a few losses. Whereas the playoffs, you got to win 3 in a row.
Yeah.
You can't,
Somebody won the league and the playoff one year.
Yeah, so Rennie has the only undefeated season. He has a perfect season in 2013 where he didn't lose at all. So that is the pinnacle.
Nobody's ever mentioned that in the chat.
No, nobody's ever mentioned it. Wasn't sure. You've only been in here for 2 years. I figure you probably hadn't heard about it. Rennie does
kind of one of those things nobody cares about. It doesn't really make a lot of news.
Yeah. So
I think Rennie's even forgot about it.
Yeah, I meant to reach out to Adam because he's got a historical spreadsheet that he keeps, and it kind of has wins and losses and like where everybody is like in like historical standings, because we've been doing this for over 20 years, which is crazy. Not everybody, but you're the newest. After that, I think it's Brennan, and Brennan's been in the league for like 5 or 6 years now. So it's like there's a lot of history that goes back to it. And I think Junior has a lot of wins, but it's because Junior has been in the league the longest. So, yeah.
Hey, give him a little credit.
Yeah. But Dave put together something for us. He was going to talk, we were, looking back at the season, one significant player from each team. Could be good, could be bad. Dave's going to share with us who it is, and we'll kind of talk about it.
Every team a little bit of play, a little bit of screen time, Let's start at the bottom. We'll start with Brennan. Mm-hmm. And the player I picked is Tyreek Hill. Because if you want to, talk about how Brennan's season just never really got off the ground, you got
you start with the first round.
That is Tyreek Hill. He was so good, like 2 years in a row or whatever, and dynamic. And he still had a couple games like that, but Miami had missing Tua some, and even when he's back, and now he's, he got arrested before he get just a lot of craziness that kind of.
And Dave, I can't be the only one. I can't remember what pick I had. I could have been 5 or 6. I would have killed to draft Tua or to draft Tyreek.
Yeah.
Yeah, like had he slipped to 6 for whatever reason, I would have taken him in a heartbeat. He's so fun to watch. And so I don't blame Brennan for taking him at 2 or 3, wherever he took him. But I mean, and now he doesn't even want to be a Dolphin anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't know
he's
what
got
he wants.
2 years left on his contract, and he's pulling a Antonio Brown and says I'm out. You know, that's crazy. How quickly that Dolphins team, which they never really got the success that they wanted, but like they have so much talent, and Tua can't stay on the field, and Waddle and Tyreek are only as good as somebody being able to give them the football, and that's sad.
But I just thought that player sort of represented how Brennan's season went.
Yeah, I mean, imagine how his season would be different had he taken Chase.
Yeah. Probably
I saw a stat day. Stat ESPN put out. 72% of Chase teams in ESPN fantasy football made the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like one player can make a big difference. Yeah. Consistent like that. Well, we got 12 teams, so this might take a while. So let's get
go ahead.
So next we be Rennie, and I gotta go Burrow because the Bengals aren't the only team that Burrow was on that he didn't make the playoffs. And it just, and we'll get to some of this, later on some other teams, but Burrow had enough, like he had some good weeks and should have, and it just guys, it goes to show that even one, awesome quarterback can't get you everywhere, everything you need.
But also, and you would know better, Dave, because you pay attention to lineups. There was a point where he was going back and forth between different quarterbacks, though.
Yeah, I meant to go back and look and see how many times he actually started Burrow early until he finally just stuck with him. And I think he did have him. I can't remember who his other quarterback was. It was somebody.
It's the old adage, Andy. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 0 quarterbacks.
It's really hard to pick the right one, and then it just frustrates you. But so yeah, I think that might have cost. Because I remember us talking about it, that it might have cost him at least 1 or 2 wins, or at least one, and he was pretty close to the playoffs. So he in a season
like this, when you're right there hovering around 8-9, one win makes, like Andy was saying, that one win got him in the playoffs possibly.
In the spirit of quarterbacks, we'll go to Lee, and we'll mention Anthony Richardson, because I feel like this guy had Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, like he seems like he has that talent. He can run, he can throw.
I drafted him in like the 15th round last year, and the first 2 weeks of the season, the 2023 season, he was unbelievable. And then he got hurt.
I feel like
and then this year,
if he had a season even close, like he was hurt some, and if he had a season anywhere near some of those other, guys that really took off this year, man, because Lee was right there,
Yeah, he
had
some
a
win
big,
streaks.
long losing streak,
Yeah.
And I think Anthony Richards' name was stamped right on that.
And Lee, am I right? So Lee won High Points twice. Wasn't he on your list? I was looking back on your list. I believe he won High Points twice, and he didn't make the playoffs. And so it just kind of shows you the Jekyll and Hyde of his season. He was either, insanely hot or no show, and unfortunate. But again, like it translates, like on the field, off the field issues with Richardson, like that same stuff as what we talked about with Tyreek.
So moving on, my turn, and I almost went with a guy that's not on my team anymore. I picked Deontay Johnson pretty high, and he ended up playing for 3 NFL teams and during the course of a season, which is not a good sign.
That's not
so I didn't even want to think about him, but that is indicative of a lot of my errors. But I'll go with the most fun name to say on my team, Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
Boy, that guy took off at the end of the year and gave me a chance. At the end, he had some really big weeks. He's a little white running back or wide receiver guy. He's not one of your typical, big wide receiver types, but boy, I don't know if you watched any games with the Chargers, but he was fun to watch.
They always seem to have those little scat backs, though, don't they?
Yeah, I mean he got hurt, banged up a little bit, but if he would have done what he did second half of the season all season, I think I would have might have won a couple more games.
So the Chargers should draft Scatterboo. He would be the perfect kind
There
of
you
back
go.
for them as well.
There you go. So we'll go to Kevin, and we'll go Joe Mixon. Boy, he was a revelation, I think, for you, right? I mean,
Yeah, and when he was on the field, he was really good, right? And
Yeah.
so like that, there was a little period of time there where I wasn't able to play him. I mean, I felt like I had a pretty balanced team. I had enough running backs to survive missing a few weeks, but I felt like that, especially with the injuries and stuff this year. I think that if the Bengals would have went to Brown earlier, it wouldn't have been such a big deal. But early in the season, it sure felt like, especially week 1, man, the Bengals would have really liked to have Joe Mixon on their team.
Yeah.
Kevin, I think
no doubt.
Your season seemed to come and go with Mixon. Like,
yeah,
you started out hot, then he was out, you were not so good, and then Rip came back when Mixon was hot.
Yeah. Yeah. Rip and Joe Mixon go hand in hand. That's a Texas thing, Andy. They just they go together.
So we in keeping with some running back themes and a few in a row here, we'll go to Josh, and we'll go the other side of the coin and Kenneth Walker, because I feel like that guy had all the talent in the world. He could have done what a lot of other guys did. He was hurt a lot, and even when he played, he had some really bad weeks that just killed Josh. Because Josh, man, if you look at his team, what he ended up, his final team with Hurts and a bunch of guys. I mean, he had some good people, but I feel like Walker kind of derailed a lot of his momentum here and there, and but it's not like he was a bad pick or anything. He had, he could have been way different.
Yeah, and that's so tough when everybody's so high on a player and they come off of a year like last year where you're just like, oh yeah, this plug and play, this guy's going to do good. And then, part of it was he's at Seattle. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of it's Seattle. They just never, Geno was amazing a year ago and that whole team was so good last year and they just struggled. So it's tough. You have a few players that can do great even if their team isn't doing well, but team has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah. So go to Brian, and you got to say Barkley. I mean, boy, what a revelation that guy was.
Yeah.
I mean, just, and Swift had a decent year last year for them as a running back, and maybe, the thing was, he lost a lot of touchdowns to the tush push. Well, they still did a few of those, but it didn't hurt Barkley's season.
Yeah, well, and it Andy was talking about it. We mentioned it on the podcast quite a bit. You almost never want quarterback, running back. You know what I mean? That's what Travis had. But this would be a season where you could look at Lamar and Henry, and then you could look at Jalen and Saquon and be like, you've just been just fine having both those guys rostered on your team, along with their number one wide receivers, probably, and because those teams were just so dominant in what they did.
All right. We'll move on to Ed, and I picked.
Just real quick. I was thinking it was Lamar. Jalen. I had drafted AJ Brown in the first round. That's why I didn't pick Barkley.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
But you'd have been just fine.
Yeah. We'll go to Ed, and we'll go to a guy that was pretty exciting. If you look at his last, I think, 5 weeks of the season, that Jalen McMillan for Tampa, man, he just blew up and kind of carried Ed, for ways. And those are the kind of players that you love to just get them at the right time. They just strike gold, and they're just great,
Well, and isn't Tampa just as a whole is just such an enigma, right? It's like the Bengals can't make the playoffs, and they've got Joe Burrow, and Tampa's got Baker Mayfield, who's been passed around from team to team, and they got guys you never heard of, and yet they're just scrappy and they win football games, and they're in an AFC South or NFC South division that you don't have to win as many football games as you do in others. So, but good for those guys.
Yeah. So moving on to junior, and I can't, the Ying to your Mixon Yang would be CJ Stroud. And
another
boy,
player that I would have killed for. That going into the draft that I'd had high on my list. I was like, man, if I can get CJ Stroud, because I love their wide receiving core. I just thought that Texas was so hot last year, and sophomore slumps are thing for a reason, but I just didn't see that coming.
Yeah, if he plays like he ended last year for junior all season, getting 25 to 30 points junior has a way to, he made the playoffs. He overcame it. He picked different quarterbacks but ultimately, he came up a game short, or 2 weeks short, I guess. But yeah, I mean that's one I had him, earmarked to pick too, and didn't, Flex, boy. Embarrassment of riches. Which player do I pick? And I'll only be the homer and pick Jamar Chase just because I'm a Bengals fan. But boy, you could have picked about anybody on his team and as the difference maker. But I mean Chase, because you pick somebody that high in the first round, you almost need them to be top 5, and he was top 1. He was first in his position. That's what you want, and that's what that what gets him where you want to be.
Yeah, it goes along. I mean, if you don't get somebody in the first round that pans out, you really have to get a gem in those later rounds, hoping that somebody then your 4th or 5th round ends up number 1 in their position somehow. But when you hit a home run in the first round, it just feels good. And then the fact that he really hit 3 home runs, with Lamar, with Henry, and with Chase. I mean, for a little while, they were 1-1-1 in their positions. And if you were to tell me that you're going to have a fantasy football team that has the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 running back, and the number 1 wide receiver, that team's going to do well.
And then I don't know if you paid attention to week 18, but he had Drake London on his team, who ended up scoring 3 touchdowns or something the last week. It's boy, just what a season. But so then moving on to Adam. And I had to go with his QB Mahomes, because early on he was sticking with him, and they were winning. The Chiefs were winning, but it wasn't because Mahomes was putting up 30 spots. And then he benches him some, here and there, but he keeps him on his team. And then right when he needed him the most, he didn't play him, and it would have been a big difference maker. So
was this season he had Kelsey on his team the whole time, right? He didn't trade for Kelsey from somebody else this season.
No,
that was last season, I think, that he did. Kelsey really kind of started slow also, but then really kind of picked up towards the end and helped him out a lot too. Not that I would say that he was more significant than probably, I just feel like having a starting quarterback that you just play every week is such a big deal. So I would agree with that. But I thought that Kelsey coming on sparked Adam's team to start playing, to doing better, because he really dug himself a hole there at the beginning.
He traded Amari Cooper to Rennie for Kelsey.
This year?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's 2 years in a row. I mean, if he doesn't start on his team, be damned, he's going to finish on his team.
Yeah.
So it's
well, and some of that, they were going through wide receivers, with injuries and stuff. So Kelsey was kind of, you knew he wasn't going to stay disappeared the whole season.
I always thought it was a potential breakup. He wanted to make sure, that there was going to be a big breakup that caused his performance to tank.
Yeah.
So then for Andy, you want to take a guess on who I picked on your team? It's not the obvious.
It's a tough one. You're not going to pick Josh Allen?
No, because I feel like, obviously just having a quarterback that's good, and he was pretty darn good especially towards the end, but if all it took was a great quarterback, then Travis would have, and Rennie and Hurts, all those other guys that had really, but you can't do it alone. So I went with one of your wide receivers that ended up week 15 and 16, with 80 yards and a touchdown, 140 and a touchdown. The old veteran Keenan Allen. Just because you can't do it alone, and you stuck with him. Like I don't know if you always played him, but he was pretty solid there at the end, and he did some good things for you.
Yeah, week 12, 14 points, week 13, 19 points, week 15, 14, and week 16, which was the big week to get you into the championship game, 20 points. So he kind of had a letdown the final week, but you didn't need it.
Yeah, but
so
it didn't.
Right.
And that was, I kind of had a place in my thinking for Keenan Allen, because I had a lot of skin in the game on the Bears with two of them that I ended up having to start a lot. And man, some weeks they could support the running, like Swift at running back and Moore and Keenan Allen, but other weeks Williams was just a little erratic, and you couldn't support all that in one game. But yeah, it takes, you can't just live and die by one player, and you had just enough of everybody else. Jacoby Myers was good for you. Kittle was actually obviously pretty solid for a lot, but yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to, it's just a little segment to
well,
touch
that was
base on
fun, and
everybody's.
kind of a walk down memory lane. It took me back to the tavern and drafting players and
Exactly.
trades I forgot happened, and so
we would have done.
Yeah. A couple last things, Dave, we want to get to before we let Andy go. Some people probably have to work tomorrow. I actually, for the first time in a long time, I'm going to drive into the office tomorrow. So it was funny. It was like Christmas break. Then I preached on Sunday. We didn't have church on the, whatever that was, the 29th. So I went, we preached. I went into the office last Thursday after New Year's Day, and got some stuff ready, had prepared a message and stuff, and then we had church Sunday, and then it snows, and so like our office, we have a terrible parking lot. Some of you guys have been there. It's like a giant hill, and so it took Jeffrey Allen like all of this week to get it plowed, and like so they just said, hey, we kind of made the decision, work from home, and so I'm going back in tomorrow, and it's like, it's like I actually need to get back in the office, because it's like I've only been in the office one day in the last like 4 weeks. It feels like, I've worked, but it hasn't been in person. And so I was like, I probably need to get back. But so I know that have you been killing rodents, Dave?
I've just been Monday, Tuesday, I stayed home and just worked. I had a lot of year-end contracts to work on, so a bunch of stupid computer work. Our nobody got around to hiring anybody to plow our driveway or our parking lot. So I tried to go in Tuesday, and I just drove right by and turned around in the next street and went home, and I'm like, get on our teams like, Josh, nobody's plowed our thing. I can't get in because I have a car. Everybody else has trucks.
Yeah, I went by today and somebody was there. Only one truck was in your parking lot.
Yeah, I know it. There were a few people there today. It got plowed, so we were all there today. So
yeah. Have you made it into the office this week, Andy?
Yeah, I was there today. Yesterday and today.
Yeah. So how was it? Today's Wednesday. So you drove in on Tuesday?
No, I didn't. Today was the only day. I'll be in.
Yeah, tomorrow. I was in my car getting ready to leave on Tuesday morning because we had some meetings at 9 a.m. So it was like 8, and had warmed up my car, and I'd made vegetable soup for everybody in the office, and we had our first of the year like all staff meeting, and so I'm all loaded up and getting ready to pull out, and our operations guy called and said, hey, they haven't touched the lot. Like there's a foot of snow. You can't, most people can't even pull in our parking lot, not to mention that it's a giant hills. He's like, they're not going to get it to it till this afternoon. So like, we gotta close. And so I was like, like pull everything, turn my car off, pull everything out, and so then I normally work from home on Wednesdays anyway. So, but yeah, it'll be good to get back to normal tomorrow. But Dave, you talked about it. If you haven't checked the write-up and you watch this, go ahead and do that, because Dave has like what the winnings for everybody is and stuff. But we agreed on this new $75 for 2025. Do you have the breakdown of what that's going to
Yeah,
go
well, and
towards?
I presented one, and then Adam sort of tweaked it, and I didn't mind his. I figured, if who's going to argue with Adam, and I didn't,
Well, who's going to
I
win
did
an argument with Adam?
exactly. I didn't disagree with it. There was a couple little things different than what I'd put down, but so with and I can repost this, I guess, but with $75, that's $900 total. We
Yep.
would keep the $10 per week, times 17 for now. I think that's probably going to change here in the next couple weeks. Or next couple years, they'll go to 18 games, and so we'll have to tweak it
Yeah.
again a little bit. But and then the regular season champ, because it's you up the price, you up that to 100, so you're getting because before it's always been you get your money back. And that's
Yeah.
nice, but it's not like, it should be worth more than that. So that's 100. So you at least win 25, over top of that of your entry fee. And then we'll keep the playoffs the same, $10, just kind of a little token just for making it. $20 if you win the first round, because that ain't easy either. And then second place gets 125, first 250. And then the fun parts is $30 set aside for whoever ends up with the highest overall weekly score.
Who would that have been
week.
this year, Dave?
Some idiot.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
So you're 1 year too late.
Yep.
And then the even more fun is there's $65 left in a pool to be decided. I guess each year we can, between me and
We'll
you
create
on
a
this
side bet
podcast,
game.
we can either a side bet where somebody gets all 65 or somebody gets 30 and 35. We can break it up however we want, and we'll come up with different ways to do that. We got a while to go. So in lieu of $75, there's only 3 teams that actually ended up with extra for this year.
Yep.
I owe you, Andy, 195. So you'll have your people get with my people, see what kind of bitcoins or whatever you want.
You paying chicken?
What you prefer. So I'll find a way to get you that.
Dave, do you hear that?
Venmo
He wants you to call the chicken place in Harrison and order $195 worth of chicken.
Okay.
Right.
And then I owe Flex 115 and I owe Adam 45. So I'll just get with them on how to get them their money, which leaves everybody else owing. Ed owes the least. He owes $5.
Nice.
Mainly because of the side bet. Junior owes 25. Kevin, Brian, Josh, and Lee all owe 65. I owe the full 75. And poor Brennan and Rennie owe 85 because of side bets and no winnings. And I think they both can handle that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So I'll repost that and keep it aside so that and somewhere down closer to August, before the tavern, remind everybody what they owe and what to send and what to bring and all that good stuff. But yeah, can't believe we're wrapping up. I mean, it seems like we just started this freaking thing. You know?
Well, and can you believe that we've been doing this podcast now for 4 seasons?
Yeah, I'd like to see a private league that has done a podcast more seasons than that.
Oh yeah. The podcast isn't about football. It's very meta. You know what I mean? It's only about our league. So
there's characters. There's
Yeah.
you just never know.
lot of thought and energy goes into this, and it is appreciated. I mean, when we went to B-Dubs the other day, Adam bought me a beer. I mean, what else can you ask for?
There you go.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I might be wrong on this, but didn't make the playoffs Blues blow up on Spotify, or no?
I
Okay.
think you're some of our songs and sketches I think have been big on TikTok, but then
Okay.
that's going to get taken down soon, so they'll be lost forever.
Rats. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
did
appreciate you,
you
Kevin. Appreciate you, Andy, for jumping on.
did you guys see
been,
you see that Travis Kelce responded to the Bengals fans that he protests
getting
a
into all
little
that.
too much. He protests a little too much. He's like, "Oh, we wanted them." So I'm not saying I don't have proof or anything like that. It was a pretty big discussion in the chat. Adam and I going at it.
Josh was in on it.
Yeah, but it made it all the way like this is a national story. There on a national landscape, people think, Kansas City really would probably, if they had their choice between Denver and Cincinnati being in the playoffs, I'll take the Broncos. And to say we went out there and worked our butts off to try to get a win in a 38-0 blowout seems a little disingenuous, but I'll leave it there. It's fine.
We'll see if they have a big gap, and we talked about it. Adam's convinced that they're built for taking time off, but it's happened before where teams come out sluggish after a long break. So
yeah, 2 weeks of not playing for Mahomes and Kelsey and some of those guys, but playoffs will be fun. You guys have somebody you're rooting for, somebody you'd like to see win the Super Bowl this year?
Lions or Bills for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can handle either one of those two because neither one of their fan bases are blowhards, and both of them probably deserve it. From a kid seeing the Jim Kelly Bills never be able to get it done, it'd be nice to see them get one. And the Lions,
Minnesota?
I think Dan Campbell is like just I'd run through a wall for that dude. So
Sam Darnold straight from Schrute Farms.
If Minnesota won it and Justin Jeffries got gritty in the Super Bowl, you wouldn't hear me complain. Okay. But I would probably pick Lions then Vikings as my. I don't necessarily want Philly to win, even though I don't have a problem with Jalen. I just don't like Philly fans. So
you don't think any of these other little, other wild card teams have a chance at all? Like,
I think anybody has a
Tampa,
chance.
Chargers.
Yeah, I mean,
Pittsburgh.
Chargers are sneaky good. They grind out wins.
Rams.
But yeah. If Stafford were to get another Super Bowl, it would be because I think their team's not getting talked about very much. And if he somehow took them to a Super Bowl this season with this team, it would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, well, Andy, thanks so much for taking time to join us. We enjoy getting to do this and to get to hear from you. So congratulations on your championship. No matter what happens, nobody can take that away from you. So
got the belt. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys doing this.
All right. Hey, everybody. Great season. See you next year, and go Reds.
See y'all.